Next, let's talk about the reasoning. So the reasons we agree or disagree with the thesis. So here we're looking for evidence. This would be Tuesday's assignment. So though I'm talking about this all at once, you'll be able to do this over the course of the week. So try not to put this off until the end of the week, since this seems like a lot. If you just do a little bit every day, it'll be more palpable, easier to do. So let's go find some reasons we agree with the thesis that the Palestinians were kicked out of Israel and it began a decades-long conflict. So here we can actually list reasons. I'd say 2 to 3 is probably sufficient. So if we were writing an essay response here, we might include these as our own sentences, but here we can just literally find evidence. So we're looking for reasons that the Palestinians were kicked out of Israel, as well as how war began between the Palestinians and Israelis. So we're going to go back to the reading. The first paragraph seems to just give us a background on what happened. So obviously we can't use the last sentence, that was our thesis. So we're going to have to look for evidence in the other paragraphs. Usually the body of an essay or a writing will have all the evidence. The last paragraph will be the conclusion. So acutely aware of their vulnerable position within the memory of the Holocaust survivors, Israel built a powerful and well-organized military. That doesn't help feed into our thesis. 1967, years of escalating border skirmishes and small-scale guerrilla attacks came to a head in the Six-Day War, which Israel won and used to expand its borders to include Gaza. All right, so this is certainly evidence to support that the Israelis and Palestinians were in conflict. So again, we're going to write this in our own words so we aren't plagiarizing, but I'm going to copy this and use it as a reference for my writing. In 1967, Israelis and Palestinians fought a six-day war. In 1967, after years of small battles, skirmishes, on the border, Israelis and Palestinians fought a six-day war where the Israelis won and expanded their territory. So that's our first bit of evidence. Let's make sure we get rid of that. So that is first bit of evidence in our own words that supports our thesis being the thesis in our own words. Time to find another one. We want to show that this wasn't just the Six-Day War that happened, but decades-long conflict between Palestinians and Israelis, something that went on an ongoing basis. So Six-Day War, we included Palestinian guerrilla groups formed violent clashes. One of the goals of Hamas, creation of Palestinian state. In Gaza today, more than 1 million Palestinian refugees are living under Israeli rule. 80% rely on aid and over 500,000 in refugee camps. Border between Gaza and the Jewish nation has become the focal point for clashes. So here we see the other bit of evidence about the Palestinians being kicked out of Israel, as well as the continuing conflict. So let's summarize this. Over 1 million Palestinian refugees still live in Israel, but fight ongoing protests and small battles, clashes, in an attempt to return to the Gaza Strip, which they assert is their right. This talks about refugees living in Israel. Let's do Israel, fight ongoing protests and small battles, an attempt to return to the Gaza Strip. Okay. We now have two pieces of evidence, both in our own words, that support our thesis being the overarching idea. Refugees, ongoing battles, Six-Day War. Let's make sure this is all uniform. So So we have our reasons that we agree or disagree with the thesis. We agree with the thesis, we believe it is the thesis, and we found evidence in the body of the writing. All right, next on Wednesday, we're finding additional evidence to support our reasons. Okay, so we're looking for just a little bit more. So again, we're going to find, here I'd say 1 to 3 pieces of additional evidence to support that. Okay, so we're looking for a little smaller details. All right, the last sentence of the reading, 2018, approximately 1,000 Palestinian protesters were shot attempting to cross the Gaza border into Israel on the 70th anniversary of Nakba. So on the anniversary of the catastrophe, or the Nakba, we had Palestinians still trying 70 years later to get back into the Gaza Strip. So this is certainly evidence for it being an ongoing conflict. Again, I'm going to paste this and rewrite it in my own words. 70 years after the Palestinians were kicked out of Gaza, they attempted to return, but 1,000 were shot. That encompasses this piece of evidence, and in our own words, sometimes there'll only be one easy to find piece of evidence, but we're going to look for a second. So back in the second paragraph, we've already talked about the Six-Day War, Palestinian guerrilla groups, including Hamas. So Hamas is a group that is looking to create a Palestinian state, so to get Palestinians some of their land back. That seems like a good bit of evidence that we can include that this conflict is ongoing. So the group Hamas, about the Islamic Palestinian group Hamas, was formed to advocate for and work towards re-establishment of a Palestinian state. That is Wednesday. So Thursday, elaborate with background knowledge. What do we know about the Israeli and Palestinian conflict? Well, maybe we know that Israelis are Jewish and Palestinians are Muslim, two groups that have historically clashed. And it can be personal, so it doesn't need to be deep. This is not from the reading. You can do some cursory research. Again, don't just Google something and paste it. This needs to be in your own words. Finally, we're going to summarize. Okay, so the format I'm asking you to use for your summary is the who did what, when, where, and why. When you look at when and where, we only need one or both of these. We don't need to know both, and sometimes we won't be given a time frame, or it'll be something that continues on over time without a discrete time it happened in. So who was the protagonist of this, or the antagonist, depending on how you look on it? Well, certainly the Palestinians had something done to them by the Israelis. So let's use the Israelis as the who did what to the Palestinians. So the Israelis, what did they do? We can look back at the reading for a refresher if we need to. So a Muslim Arab group and a Jewish group. Jewish population grew. Britain created two states. Then a group declared Israel a Jewish state. They fought a war, and Palestinians were expelled, kicked out, or fled from their homes. And that land became Israel. So the Israelis, after the Holocaust, this is the when, getting some context, after the Holocaust and creation of a Jewish state, kicked out the Palestinians in, we need to know the year, so this happened in the next day after 1948. Now, the reason I didn't just type 1948, even though I saw it twice, is it could have been a year later, right? So this certainly was in 1948. In 1948. And then the why. So this is a bit of speculation of which we're going to refer to our evidence. Evidence states that there was a war. Palestinians lived in Israel. There was violence between the two groups. And there's historically clashes between Jews and Muslims. Of centuries of conflict between the two religions and people groups. Okay, so we have the who, Israelis, did what? They kicked out the Palestinians. When and where? In 1948, after the Holocaust and creation of a Jewish state. It gives some context. And why? Because it's centuries of conflict between the two religions and people group, and the Jews' desire to expand their new nation. Sometimes reading this back to yourself can help you realize that your thoughts are incomplete. I've gone through and normalized, well, almost everything into size 12 font. You do not need to do that. I will not be taking off points for formatting, but understand that your English teachers may, so it's good practice. Once you've completed everything, you will need to submit this. Again, you should all have your own copy, so you'll be submitting this in Google Classroom. Hopefully you'll get the grades and comments that will either help you revise or that you're happy with. You can earn extra credit on this. I know it seems like a lot of work, but just breathe. You can do this. Thank you so much, and hopefully this has helped you get a better understanding for how you'll be doing the Bellwork I ask of you each week. Last request is that you try to break this up over the course of the week, and that formatting isn't too important. I am OCD, so of course I would go ahead and insert a page break here so that I could have all my response, insert break, page break, so I can have all my response on just one page, but that's just me. You live your life, you do you, and I'll make sure I give you grades and comments appropriate. Of course, we do work on the mastery system, so if you're not happy with your grade, you can go back in and revise it. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.